So before I get started, let me say hotep to my family. Assalamu alaikum to my brothers. Assalamu alaikum to my sisters. What I want to begin today with is the importance of understanding language. That's basically what I'm going to be dealing with here. And I'm going to be dealing with a QURANIC verse. My thing is to try and get my brothers and sisters who practice Islam, as well as, brothers and sisters who are out into Christianity or whatever particular religious school of thought that we've come to follow. My thing is to try and get us to begin to use our own mind and understand exactly what it is that we are putting our faith and belief in. So this is just going to be kind of like an experiment. And what I want to show my brothers and sisters about the language in the Quran is that when you're reading these so-called translations, Yusuf Ali, Maulana Muhammad, whatever particular translation you're reading, what they call translations, you're actually not reading a translation, you're basically reading an interpolation. You're reading a particular group of people's school of thought based upon whatever particular sect that they follow. This is very important to our brothers and sisters who can't read the language in the Quran. Very important. So I just want to show you how they interpolate and not actually translate. And how in doing this, it keeps us divided as a people. An example of in the Quran, when they say no other religion will be accepted by Allah except Islam. And if you didn't catch it, because we have to pay attention to details, they somehow translated all of the words except the word Islam. They transliterated Islam. They kept that word in the transliteration. Had they said no other religion would be accepted by Allah except the peace or a state or condition of peace, then it wouldn't divide us. People wouldn't say, oh, you have to accept Islam. Allah is not going to accept anything other than Islam. And we have this misunderstanding of the word Islam because we relate it to a particular religion. And that is only a play on words. And the word that they use for religion, the word deen, does not mean a religion. It means a path, a way. It means to be judged, or it means to be indebted to. So if we were to translate that, it would say no other way would be accepted other than that state and condition of peace, meaning peace between us, and not that division and separation. And this is why I chose this particular verse in the Quran to explain. This is going to be in 10:37, Surah 10, Ayah 37. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how the language works and how the understanding is going to differ from the interpolated version. This is going to be Yusuf Ali interpolated version that I use. I know there are other interpolations by other people who call themselves translating the Quran. But if you have a translation, whichever translation you have, these translations differ. I'm going to read Yusuf Ali's translation to you. He's saying, this Quran is not such as can be produced by other than Allah. On the contrary, it is a confirmation of that went before it and a fuller explanation of the book, wherein there is no doubt from the Lord of the worlds. That's his translation. So what we want to do is we want to look at the language in the Quran itself. We want to look at each one of these words. We want to understand these words in their grammatical structure. We have to understand the grammatics of language, and that's in any language. I don't care what language we speak. We have to understand the grammatics because that's the rule, that's the construction of the word to give clarity to its meaning. When it starts out, وَمَا كَانَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ أَنْ يُفْتَرَأَ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ تَصْدِيقَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ وَتَفْصِيلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ مِنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. When we say that, and we can only go from the translation, we're going to miss everything important in that particular ayat. What is what we call a conjunction? It's a connector. What deals with what? Two events that occur at the same time or at the same space. It's a conjunction. So the events that we're going to be dealing with, keep in mind two or more events. Why mad and not was past tense. It's a past tense verb, cannot. And not was this Quran. And this is very important to understand. We have to pay attention to detail. It is not this book that we have today that's being spoken of. It is in the nominative case what we call the subject of this particular sentence, because at that time it had not been compiled into a book, so it cannot be talking about the book itself. The root word to the word Quran is the word qara. It means to recite, to announce, to say something. So we're talking about the things that was being recited. That is the subjunctive particle. It's going to put this verb in the subjunctive mood, what we call the subjunctive mood. Subjunctive means, to hope, wish, desire something. Telling you it's not. As to say a fact, it's a hope, wish, desire. And we have to understand that. What's important here is this word that this mood, this subjunctive mood is referring to. The root word here is fa'ra'a. Here it's imperfect. It's a passive verb, and it's in the 8th verb stem. These are the things that we have to understand. The meaning of the 8th verb stem. The 8th verb stem means to do something for yourself. Whatever it is you're doing it for yourself. Now, being that it's passive means that act is falling up on you. It is not you performing the act, but the act is falling up on you. So whatever it is that is coming up on you, you know what I'm saying, you're trying to do it for yourself. Here, the word fa that is lengthwise, something that continues on, you're trying to cut it off. This father, he say, invent. It means to cut off. It's an act. Past participle, a verb stem. Imperfect, meaning that it's not complete, that it's continuing to happen. That's what we have to understand. So, it's telling us, and not was this message, right, to be cut off, meaning from, of, relating to, doing, meaning to administer, is a noun, something that is being administered, passing down, administered by someone. Here is the Nabi Muhammad, alayhi wa sallam, from Allah. Wa lakin, and this is a conjunction that is giving us an understanding of the word sidak, which is the word sadak, meaning a confirmation of something. So it's telling us it's not meant to be cut off. That which have been administered by Allah. Now, the word lakin is a conjunction, but the meaning of it is to speak correctly. To speak correctly. That's why in the Quran, when it tells the Nabi Muhammad that his job was to make the message clear, to speak correctly what was being revealed to him. And it's also important to understand this ayat deals with those ayats that continuously to tell us that this is nothing new. It's the same thing that was given before. It was the same thing that the prophets and messengers had brought before. And we have to keep that in mind at all times when reading the Quran, that it is only a confirmation of that which came before it. Now, we have to look at this historically. And the reason I say we have to look at it historically is because we have to realize that all of these today's scriptures, these Qurans, Bibles, all of these books get their origin from our ancestors. We have to keep in mind when scripture talks about Adam, the children of Adam. Adam is only the makeup of the human being, not a person, only the makeup of the human being, the original human beings. We have to keep in mind the first human beings were our ancestors. And we have to keep in mind they were the only human beings on this earth for hundreds of thousands of years. There were no other people besides our ancestors. So keeping that in mind, it gives us that perspective. It gives us that understanding that it was our ancestors who began writing. It was our ancestors who gave thought. It was our ancestors who first began comprehending the things here on this earth. The sun, the moon, stars, planets, oceans. It was our ancestors who first wrote and began teaching about nature, spirituality, geography, archaeology, anthropology. It was our ancestors. So all of this comes from our ancestors. So when we read it, we have to relate it to our ancestors. And when we realize that our ancestors are a part of us, then we can see that it is in reference to us, and we have to read it as though it is us in the scripture, and it is us that the scripture is speaking to. So So, that being said, let's continue on. So, what it is telling us here, and not was this message, this reciting, right, that, they desired to cut off from how it was administered by Allah, and it was spoken correctly as a confirmation, because that's what the word Sadiq means. It's a verbal noun. It's in the second stem verb, right? That which Baini Yadahi, that which was evident. That's what the word Baini means, to be evident, to be clear, to be factual. Before it, saying don't cut off that line of communication. Don't cut off the message that the ancestors, those before you, brought. Don't cut it off, separate it and divide it. That's what the word tafsil means, to separate, to divide. The scripture, that's what we have. We have the Bible, we have the Quran, we have all of these different New World transliterations. We have all of these different so-called scriptures that have been separated and divided. When the original message, it say the scripture, La Reba Fihi, was no doubt, right? La Reba, no doubt in it. It was no doubt in the Baini, the evident, the clear message that was administered by the Creator, in which our ancestors was inspired to begin reading, writing, learning. And it's telling us from the Rabbil Alameen. They say Lord of the worlds, or the sustainer of the worlds. That English word Lord, which we get confused, or the word sustainer. And I want to show you the misunderstanding. The word Rabbi is a noun in a genitive, meaning possessive. When you say sustainer, the English word sustainer is an active participle, not a noun. This is a noun in a genitive form. And that confuses us when it says Ailamin. It means to sustain, or that which sustains you, the things that sustain you. The substance of the things that sustains you, that's in the world. It's in the celestial world, it's in the terrestrial world. The things that sustain us is what the sun, the moon, the stars, the oceans, the trees, the water, the oxygen, the land, the plants, the animals, all of the things that sustain us. So, Ailamin, the word Ailamin, same as the word Talim, comes from the Greek word Ailamin, to know, to learn, to understand. The substance of things, right, for you to understand. The things that's going to sustain you. That the Creator put here for our livelihood, to sustain us. Now, I just wanted to give you that to show you basically how we become so miseducated following these foreign schools of thought, people who are not even of us or from us, we follow their school of thought. They tell us, hey, you can't read the Quran yourself. You have to have a scholar to understand the Quran. This is the things they tell us, and these are the things that many of our brothers and sisters fall victim to. And they'll argue among us, we'll argue among ourselves. Brother, you can't learn the Quran. You got to go to a scholar. And that should be an insult to your own intelligence. The Creator tells us in the Quran, have I not given you eyes? Have I not given you an understanding? You know, have I not given you a brain, a mind? Say little thanks it is that you give. We are not even insulted when somebody tells us that. We just accept it and we begin to tell other brothers who's trying to show us, hey brother, this is easy to learn. Because the Quran itself tells us. He sent it in the Arabic and it is easy. And he sent it in the Arabic that you may have wisdom. So, why is it they tell me I can't understand this? Wa, a conjunction, mad, a negative, right? Can have a past tense verb, had a demonstrative noun for something near, right? Out of on that, a proper noun in a nominative case, you know, and a subjunctive particle, right? Youth, imperfect passive eight stem verb, you know, men, a preposition denoting, relating to or from something, you know, related to something, you know, doing me, a noun in a genitive form, Allahi, a noun in a genitive form, wa, a conjunction, lakin, a conjunction that only deals with verbs, right? Lakin, that, a conjunction that will only deal with nouns, you know. Tap, sidak, second verbal stem, right? Verbal noun, right? Alabi, a relative pronoun, baini, a adverb, right? Yade, he, right? A noun, right? In the third person with the suffix pronoun attached to it. Wa, conjunction again. Tap, sil, second verb stem, verbal noun, right? Why is it that we fall for that? We have to stop being subjected to other people, you know, being dependent on other people. When you got your own mind, when you got your own intelligence. So what I want to do is now I want to explain why we do that. And I have to erase this, and we're just going to deal with something. Remember, this is what we call talim, to teach, to learn. I want to explain why we do this. And when I say language is very important, it's very important. I want to deal with a word. And the word we're going to deal with is the word project. This is a word that we have to understand. Right? Many of us grew up in what we call projects. We grew up in what we call projects. And projects to us was those apartment complexes that's in bad neighborhoods. And we've been convinced that we tough because we grew up in the projects, that makes us bad, tough. That is the ignorance that have been beat into us or shaped and formed or impressed upon us. A project is what? A project is an experiment. We don't even realize that those of us who grew up in projects, and projects is not just a building because it moved outside the building into the communities, into the mind. Project is not just a building itself, but it's an experiment. That's what a project is. It's an experiment. You experiment on things. The Europeans conducted a particular project. What they did was they took a cage and they put a lot of rats in this cage. Caged up a whole lot of rats. They just filled it up with rats. And what they would do they would take a stick and they would poke at the rats. You know, they poke at them, agitate them. And when they first began agitating them, poking at them, the rats began to bite at the stick. Right? They was biting at what was agitating them at first. But as they continued to poke at them, and the rats saw it was no avail, you know, they couldn't get nothing from biting at the stick. Every time they started poking the rat afterwards, the rats would start biting another rat. That was an experiment. That was a project. And what they learned from that, if you agitate people so, once they see that they're up against a particular system that they feel they can't defeat, you keep agitating them, they'll turn on each other. And that's what the projects were designed to do. To box people in, to crowd them in, right? Keep them dependent against a system in which they felt they couldn't defeat. And the mindset within the project, the people begin to turn on each other, and that's what we do. When we're crowded up in places and we can't get out, you know, we turn on each other. But this is done systematically. And we fail to realize the manner in which we have been subdued and the type of psychological impressions that have been placed upon us. When we read certain ayahs in the Quran that explains to us the things that are happening to us, we don't get it because somebody else is giving you the perspective of that ayat. It's like in that ayat when it's called awesome. They say by the token of time, very man becomes lost. You say by the token of time. The word asara means to squeeze, to pressure, you know, to impose. You know, it's like that punching those rats, you know, agitate, to oppress something. Say, under that, us, that squeezing, that oppression, man becomes lost. What man is it talking about? See, we don't understand the language of the Quran. The word insane, the word bashara. We don't understand those words when it say man. The word insane deals with the characteristics of a bashara. The bashara is the man. The bashara means the skin, the epidermis, the physical skin, the physical being, physical human being. That will be the human being, the bashara. The insane deals with characteristics. They always translate it man, mankind, but it's the characteristics of the original bashara. The word insane means to be social. It means to be civilized. You know, it means to be friendly. You know, it deals with all the moral qualities that the Creator created in the original human beings. As the scriptures say, Adam, that human being. Adam is only the bashara. That the Quran tells us the Creator created from Salsalin Hadmatin, from black melanated particles, the melanin, the first melanated human beings, the first black human beings, you know, that black people come from, that we come from, you know, the original people. we get confused not only in the language or the interpolations, we get confused in our own makeup. We get confused in our own history because we as a people haven't come together understanding we are the children of Adam and that there are others who are not the children of Adam that were created to be against us, meaning that their makeup is not in accord with the natural order of things, that they're going to be opposite. So if they're opposite, they're going to oppose you. Why? Because the makeup is different. We don't get that. It's something we have to get. But they confuse us all the time. And as I say, we don't scrutinize them. We only scrutinize one another or the originators of this. And we don't have to look to foreign people, invading people, people who have came in and colonized us and oppressed us, have stolen from us. I mean, the same people who raped our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, who raped our ancestors, who hung our ancestors, who beat, enslaved, we still look to these same people for guidance, for support, for freedom, when we have it in our own self, when we can reach it through our own means, once we come together and realize that we're one people. Once we realize we're not minorities, we let them brainwash us into thinking we are minorities, when it is them who are the minorities. We are the majority of people in the world, even after the hundreds of millions of us that they've killed off and are still killing today. We are still the majority. We're the minority in this place, what we call this United States. We make up only about 14% of the United States population. And we don't realize the importance of understanding that. Here in the United States, we make up 14% of the U.S. population. 1 out of 5 of us is either incarcerated, unemployed, on probation, on drugs. We have to take that 1 out of 5 away from that 14%. So if we take that 1 out of 5 from that 14%, we can realize we don't have the money that the TV, the media and stuff allude to freedoms in which we've been misled to believe. 1 out of 5 or 14% takes that 14% way down. So what we have to do as a people is realize that in the world, we're about 80% of the world population. But we've been so divided in that 80% into fractions of people based upon different beliefs, different schools of thought, and not realizing that's the method in which they use since they came among us to divide and conquer us. When they divide us, they can conquer us. Because when they divide us, they can experiment with each little fraction and keep us fighting among each other. When we look at history, we will see the manner in which they came into each nation of our ancestors. The first thing they did was deceived them into thinking they were friends, associates, and they began to implant in those particular groups or tribes mind to fight off or fight against the other tribes. Same thing they did with the people we call Indians. We're talking about natives, we're talking about our ancestors. How they came in and first came in with the diseases, and, you know, the blankets, the Kentucky bluegrass, they came in with those diseases, you know, got the people sick, you know, then they began to tell them, hey, you know, need to take what they got, you know, for your survival, and we'll pay you this, we'll pay you that, you know. The same process over and over continues to hunt us and continues to break us down. So I just wanted to do this little short video in hopes that you got something out of that. I'll be back next week. Today I have an appointment I'm going to have to rush to, so I just wanted to get it in because our thing is to try and do one of these every Sunday, one of the Jumas every Friday, and I had to get it in before my appointment. So hopefully you'll tune in next week. We'll get a little bit further in it. I just had to do it. So with that, I'm gonna close. Gotta get to my appointment. Hotel. Assalamu alaikum to my brothers. Assalamu alaikum to my sisters. With that, I'm gonna cut out.